We're very happy to have with us today Dr. Nimmi Rangaswamy, who is visiting the Institute of South Asian Studies. Nimmi is here to attend a workshop on mobile phones in South Asia. She works for Microsoft and is presently based in Hyderabad. Nimmi, welcome to ISS.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you, your training has been as an anthropologist. So tell us why Microsoft hires anthropologists, and how did you sort of come around working for Microsoft?
In fact, the company, the Microsoft company started hiring anthropologists almost a decade ago, because they felt that anthropologists bring that very valuable user perspective into product design or into product life cycles itself, you know. And as the global world is shrinking, as more cultures are interfacing with technology and using technologies, user contexts and the kind of cultural sense users bring to technology use become very valuable to companies like Microsoft, you know. And I don't know, my venture into the Microsoft Research Labs has an interesting background, but what I would like to say is that the research lab has a very flourishing and very open research culture, and they were very welcoming of other perspectives and social scientists. So I think that has worked well in my favor.
And how long have you been working?
Yeah, I've been working for 6 years. This is my 7th year. Yeah, I started as the lab birthed in Bangalore, India. So I've been there all along.
And what sort of research have you been doing in these last few years?
In fact, when I joined in 2005, the buzz was ICTs in rural India, because the digital divide was very prominent, and it paralleled the urban-rural divide. So I started by studying internet kiosks in villages in India. You know, there was this little cluster of internet kiosks that sprouted in a village near Pune, Maharashtra. So I went around studying them for the first year to understand what value would internet bring to village India. Was there a demand? And what would people demand it for? So on and so forth. But then it was a little disillusioning that internet couldn't contextualize in a rural setting. So we in fact wrote nice interesting treatises about how the internet in rural India has to have many other backbones, you know, for it to take roots. And then I moved on to studying technology in several low-income contexts in urban India. You know, it's just not the rural divide paralleled urban and rural India, but there were several suburbs within urban cities, big cities like Bombay, where this divide existed. So I began studying mom and pop cyber cafes, not the fancy access centers. They were these small little cafes that sprouted in several locations of Bombay, and wondered how their business model worked, and who was accessing it. Because millions of people accessed internet in urban India through the cafes. So that took me, I did an ethnography of cafes for about a couple of years. So that is how I entered. And right now I'm studying urban slums and technology interfaces. You know, that's my current engagement.
What features of mobile telephony do you think have proved to be most popular? I mean, how do we really explain this amazing uptake of mobile phones? You know, a decade ago, I think there were about something like 4 million mobile phones, and today we're looking at something like 700 million. So it's an amazing sort of surge, you know, in the use of mobile phones. How do you explain that, and what do you think, you know, makes mobile phones so popular?
I think there are two levels of answers to this question. One is coming from freshly from this workshop. We had this wonderful macroeconomic perspectives and policy perspectives on how the mobile phone evolved in the last decade to what it is today. One is how several players and stakeholders merged to make the mobile phone what it is today. One is the government, the most important player, making certain kinds of policies which were market friendly and friendly to investments from abroad. You know, you have service opened up the whole space for service providers, and this took a long time because nobody wants to give up that monopoly, especially a kind of an economy that was socialistic in its thought. So I think that deregulation and the whole perspective on economic liberalization, which started more than a decade ago, And that set the pace, and the market caught on. Because there was, and it pushed prices lower, not only for the handsets, but also for the services. And in the last couple of years has, with deregulation pushing even deeper into that space, and handsets just flooding the market, and Nokia starting a handset unit in Chennai, which pushes the price even further, has driven this adoption. And also, this is the one side of the picture where the policymakers and the other players come into the whole scene. But the other thing is, mobile phone as a communication device, I think hit the correct nerve, and people wanted it to talk and connect, which in some cases could never do, where the rural-urban divide was closing in, so on and so forth. And the second thing is, which is, as an anthropologist, which fascinates me is, it is just no longer a communication device. It's everything else. It is not only something that is on your person. It becomes a statement. It becomes an extension of yourself. So it becomes a statement of what you are, and it sometimes becomes a status symbol. It becomes a fashion icon, so on and so forth, which changes the meaning of what the device is.
So it starts to define you in
yes.
a sort of a right. Now I'll come back to that point on the social significance.
Okay.
Is this then the biggest thing since the printing press, or is it even bigger than that, according to you?
Probably, I'm a little biased towards technology. I'm very a big optimist. I think it's the biggest thing ever.
Oh, really?
For me, printing press, and what Dr. Jeffrey said, the shoe. He connected it with the shoe. I think that was a very interesting metaphor to use. Simple metaphor, but I feel this. It's a cataclysmic thing that is happening. This whole ICT technology and digital technologies. Like cities in India, like Bangalore and Hyderabad, have cataclysmically changed, because of digital technology. So for me, I think it's the biggest thing ever. Though historically, I'm not a historian, so I wouldn't know how to place it in history. Since I'm an anthropologist, I'm looking at context. So I feel it's one of the biggest things ever
that has happened,
and it has changed India as a country. Its economy and people interfacing with these technologies, and how they are reimagining themselves. And of course, the concomitant processes are deregulation and policies.
No, I agree. And in fact, as regards change, I thought I'll just ask you something quickly about the SMS Gap Shop that you mentioned in your paper yesterday. I thought that was really fascinating, in some ways showing how it's completely revolutionized, the way people now interact. How do you think this platform, the SMS Gap Shop, has actually sort of informed thinking about mobile, communities, communications in the last few years?
Maybe I will link this this whole dialogue with the revolution of social networking, virtual social networking, and Facebook as some kind of a visible face to this entire networking revolution. And probably many of you all have seen the movie Social Network, and you can see how the movie traces not only the business model of social networking, and how a geek, a technocrat who had an insight into human behavior designed this whole thing. Because at one end is a complex technology that is driving Facebook, but at the user end, it's one of the simplest technologies you can imagine, just like the Google search engine. Anybody can go and log into Facebook, but the technology that supports Facebook is very complex. So what I feel about Gap Shop is, again, this is for a price of an SMS, you're linking millions of people. And it's only 40 million people now. It can go on to 500 million people if it follows the model of Facebook and Google, where the user interface is simple, cheap, but the back end is complex. Still, I think SMS Gap Shop is stuck with a simpler technology. Once it becomes complex and is able to enable that kind of a rich interface, I don't think anything can stop it.
So you obviously seem very optimistic. So what happens next? Where do people and the technology go now? Does Microsoft have a vision about that?
Yeah. The latest in Microsoft is the cloud. When you enter, I see it in the Indian airports. I haven't seen it in the Singapore airport as yet. You will see the cloud. Everything is the cloud. I don't know whether people are familiar with this notion of cloud who are not technocrats. They feel that you don't have to own a space, you don't have to own a laptop to be a part of, to store your data. The cloud will do it for you, and you just have to connect to the cloud. And you can do it from the mobile phone too. You don't have to do it from a PC. So Microsoft is invested in this whole notion of cloud, where the ownership is managed by a back end, and you just have to connect to it. And it's going to be safe, it's going to be user friendly, and it's going to be secure. That is the
vision.
So the big thing that Microsoft is doing. And the other thing is, it's also investing in mobile phones. The mobiles, the Windows 7 as a platform like the Android or the Symbian or Java, so on and so forth, is a big thing Microsoft is investing in. And it's just signed a deal with Nokia, which soon Windows 7 will be a part of the Nokia phones. And Microsoft has to change, because it's no longer a PC world. People have started believing that the PC market is not going to grow in India. That's what one of the Nokia's CEO was telling us in one of the talks. Maybe a bit exaggerated, but probably there's a big truth to it. So I think Microsoft is thinking about, I think already moved into this whole mobile and the cloud kind of vision.
And when will this actually be implemented, this cloud?
Cloud is already there.
It's already there?
It's already there,
okay.
But I think we have to have very interesting marketing strategies for people to get onto the cloud. You know, the model.
Because I don't think many people know, at least I don't know about it, so I thought I was checking.
Yeah, I think it's beginning. You know, cloud has already been there. The Google, the entire Chrome Google model. In fact, the Google were pioneers of the cloud, but I think the people are still worried, no? How secure is their data? People want to own their data, right? So it has to be on their storage device. So that, I think, has to move on. I think the way you do it is looking at the whole mobile phone pay-as-you-go model. You know, you have to come up with very innovative marketing strategies, and also that whole security and changing the thinking of people to a data that is elsewhere. But it can be secure, because Google has access to data, right? Everything you do, you send on a Google email, is accessible. Even Facebook, for that matter. Everything, the Facebook can access your data. You know, so that thinking, probably. But I feel with the young people that are going on to the internet in India today, people not like me, who are trained in Microsoft security, but people who are still flexible with the notion of what is secure. Right? And those would be the millions of young Indians. You know, those will be the targets now.
Any final thoughts you have about mobile phones, or could you tell us something about your future research plans? Are you sort of moving into something else? Yeah,
I'm still kind of find myself with the mobile phone. And my current work is again in the slums of Hyderabad. I'm working in a slum that is in the shadow of the IT park. And I'm studying the young adults, the teenagers. The younger, the better for me. But I'm trying to I'm getting people who are 15 and 16 who are kind of defining how to use internet, and they're brokering mobile technology to their families and friends also. The fascinating thing I'm finding is they're all becoming mobile internet users, having not used the internet in the cyber cafe or through their PCs. And Airtel is having this wonderful pay-to-go models. For 5 rupees, Indian rupees, you get 50 MB of download. So I'm trying to find out what does internet mean to them, and what they are accessing internet for, and how that redefines the meaning of internet to these young adults, and they are going to broker technology for decades to come. So that is what I am looking at now, and that is some kind of defining my anthropology also, and anthropology and technology, anthropology and society, anthropology and personhood, so on and so forth. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, indeed, a very fascinating subject, and we hope to have you back here again for another workshop, so you can discuss your research with us. Thank you very much, Nimmi. It was a pleasure having you here, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much for having me over and giving me this opportunity. I hope to get back.
Thank you.